Hi, this is Jeannie with my Perpetual Project. Today I'm going to do a tutorial on how to convert Crown Royal bags into Crown Royal face masks. This is the large bag and this is the small one. I think it only comes in two different sizes. I'm not positive, but this was made with a small one. Today I'm going to use the large bag and show you how the process goes. What I'm doing is using the original twine that comes in the bags as opposed to elastic. So let's get started. What we'll do first is cut the casing off the top. We're going to cut it at about 1.5 inches, and you can just cut through all layers of the bag, and we're going to cut off the bottom. So we're going to have 3 sections of the bag to get started. So you want to measure this. You'll see that I'm working on a grid so I can measure it. Actually, I'm going to cut it 1.5 inches below the casing, but 2 inches according to my mat. This will make a large face mask. And so a large face mask is usually 7 inches by 9 or 10 inches. So I'm going to measure that out. Let's cut off the bottom next. You'll want to cut enough below the Crown Royal logo so that you can still see that at least on the chin and not tucking underneath the chin. So I'm going to cut right where this bag curves. What I'm doing is tucking in the sides so that I have a flat surface to work with. So take that stitching and match it up so that now you have your bag looking like this. Line it up on your grid if you have one and cut straight across. So you have this piece out. It's a little crooked. See how that goes? So I'll just even that up. So now we have our bag that is 8 inches wide. These pieces are going to go on the end to make it wider. So line up your seams before you do your next cut. And we want to make this 6 inches. So now this is 8 inches wide by 6 inches tall. We're going to turn it inside out. Line up your seams. Make sure they are facing the same direction. And pin the top and the bottom. We're going to leave 1 inch to 1.5 inches opening in the top so we can insert a twist tie to help it bend over the nose. Our main face mask piece is pinned. You'll want to pin fairly close to the edge. Give yourself about 1/4 inch. So you're going to stitch to about here, leave an opening, and then stitch the rest of the way. That's on the top. And on the bottom, you're just going to stitch side to side. Now that we have our main piece sewn, you can see we have an opening here. I'm going to turn it inside out. Before I do that, I'm going to reduce a little bit of the bulk on the corners by just cutting them at an angle. Just taking the tip off. Now we'll turn it inside out. This is a light felt fabric, so it turns pretty easily. And what you'll want to do for a little bit later is get your iron going. Use a steam iron if you have one, and a pressing cloth. If your iron is too hot with this felt, it might possibly melt it. So you want to be careful with that. So once you have it turned inside out, you're going to use a sharp, pointy object, not too sharp, so that you can push the corners, make the corners nice and squared off. And then we'll work on the side pieces. Now that our piece is turned inside out, I'm working on making those corners nice and sharp. I have one more to go. You just put your little pointy thing in there and make sure those corners are sharp. The next step before we get to the side pieces is to use this opening and thread through. This is optional, but thread through a twist tie if you have one. Just thread it into the top. You can fill that in there with your fingers. And once you have that in, you're going to pin it in place and then stitch around it so that it holds it there. I'm just going to pin that in place like so. Once you have it pinned in place, you're going to sew very close to the edge, then down about 1/4 inch across the bottom to hold that twist tie in place, and then finish it off over here. The twist tie is sewn in and the edges sewn shut. So the main part of our mask is finished. Now we'll work on the side pieces, which will also loop over the ears. You can see where I marked the center pieces, the edges, where the edges are going to be. I'm going to stitch along each of these, where these pins are, to hold the twine in place. And then I'm going to cut between these pins, so I'll have 2 separate pieces. So I've stitched right here. I'm using the color of thread that matches the material, so it's a little hard to see. And now I'm going to snip between those 2 to separate. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So now we have our 2 side pieces. I'm going to pull up the earpiece. See that? It's going to be nice. Before we attach the side pieces, we're going to clean finish these edges. So you'll want to turn it over once and twice, and then stitch this down either by hand or on your machine. It is a little bulky right through here, so if your machine is not wanting to go through that, just whip stitch it by hand. You just want a clean finish. And once you have that done, we'll run a basting stitch to make it fit that edge. It's still going to be a little bit bigger, and we want to smooth that in with a gather. You can also pleat it if you want to, kind of personal preference there. The edges are clean finished now, so they won't fray or anything like that. And I have a basting stitch run across the bottom of both pieces. So now you're going to take your main face mask piece and you're going to right sides together, pin these, and then stitch them. And I'm going to pin them just a little bit below the edge. Do a 1/4 inch seam here, because then we're going to open it up and press it. So what you'll want to start to do is line up the edges and then gather the stitching. So put a pin on each side. And you're going to gather the side piece until it's the same size. Finish pinning both sides. So your piece should look like this, where you're just a little bit away from the edge, and as you sew you can make sure that that's even. Not that it matters too much on here. So stitched and gathered, pinned and gathered, and now I'll stitch it. Once you have the earpieces sewn on, so you're going to just tuck this up and pin it. Now you can press the side pieces out flat before you pin it and sew it, or you can wait until after you finish pinning it and sewing it. I like to wait until after, so I'm all done with everything. So once you have the pins in place, you're going to stitch really close to this edge. So you'll be stitching through this part right up here. Now we've stitched the two side pieces, nice and clean, finished. You can see that's how the front of it looks. And then these will pull up for the earpieces. Now if you're making a mask out of one of the large bags, you have a lot of wiggle room in how much to make these how wide to make these side pieces. There's some extra material, and what height to make the main face mask. Now I'm going to press it. Press all these seams down, or this stitching down, and come back with the finished product. Alright, I've pressed the face mask. It's all done. The earpieces come out. They're not as big as if you were using elastic, but because the face mask is wider than normal, you won't need it. Let me show you what I mean. I made this one earlier. And the nose piece. Aren't those cute? If you don't drink Crown Royal, you might check with the local taverns or pubs in your area to see if maybe they can save these for you. Not positive they get them that way when they buy their Crown Royal. Or maybe you'll have a friend who has some and she will give those to you, like mine did for me. I hope you decide to make one of these. They're a lot of fun. They go together really fast, and they're just different. If you're wearing a face mask like most of us have been asked to do, this is a fun way to do that. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. I'll put a link below to the blog post with a lot of pictures and step-by-step instructions. I've also made the ones with elastic, so if you prefer that, I will have a separate tutorial for that. I'll put the link below so that you can check out both of them. Thanks for watching. For more inspiration, head on over to my perpetual project. See you there.